Hi everybody. So in the video that I'm going to do first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Critical Evaluation Planner, and I'm actually going to make 3 separate videos to talk about different elements of this planner. So they should all be shorter than the 2 long videos I gave last time, but they're just going to cover different topics. So the first thing in the first video, I'm just going to have the planner pulled up, and I want to talk a little bit about language and credibility. And then we'll talk separately about worldviews and biases so that you're clear on what a bias, what you're looking for when you're looking for bias. And then we'll have a separate video about creating your thesis statement. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is language and credibility. Here I just have a little reminder that when it says the Unit 4 reading, you're going to be using Ungrading by Susan Bloom for the majority of this planner. In fact, I think for this entire planner, you're going to be answering questions just about the Ungrading article by Susan Bloom, which is the cornerstone of our, I think it's Susan. I should double check that. I'll just say by Bloom, which is going to be the cornerstone of our paper. So what you're going to be critically evaluating in this unit is that article, Ungrading by Bloom. So you've also on your own, everybody's found their own articles that they can bring in and talk about as outside sources, but the article that we're actually evaluating is going to be the one that's by Blum, Ungrading. For some reason, I keep calling her Bloom, but it's definitely Blum. Okay. So the first question we have here is, what writing choices does the author make in the article? So this is basically a question, and it says provide specific examples from the article. So I'm going to break some of this down because, you know, that's how I like to do it. And I'm going to talk about maybe rhetorical appeals. I don't really know what details. That one's not as clear to me. Sentence structure. So I'm just pulling out a couple of things that I specifically want to talk about. This is basically how my brain works, because this is a question that has a lot of different things included in it, a lot of different parts to it. So I'm just going to pull out some of the things that I want to talk about, and you can do the same. So rhetorical appeals, I'm going to identify if there's lots of examples of ethos, logos, pathos. So I'm going to pull up the articles. Give me 1 second. And through the magic of pause, I paused the video, and here it is. I pulled up the article. Yeah, so it is Susan, and it is Blum. So here is my article, Ungrading by Susan Blum. And when I'm looking to identify things about the language, I'm looking basically in this section, this whole section about language. I'm trying to figure out if the way that the author words her argument impacts the message. So I'm going to try and think about rhetorical appeals, and I'm going to look for examples. So I'm going to say there's lots of ethos. So that's an example of an ethos appeal. And so that's true, kind of, that's just a generic description. If I were y'all, I would find a specific maybe quote and include that in here. Then I'm also going to see if there's any pathos appeals. Or rather, I'm just going to say that there is a pathos appeal, I'm pretty sure. So let me pull this up. Remember that pathos can work to kind of trigger lots of different types of emotions. I think that there are several pathos appeals in here. So pathos can appeal to fear, but it can also appeal to like a sense of desire. And by that, I mean, remember that this is written for an audience, probably of teachers and administrators. And then, so you can think about if that's the target audience, how you might appeal to their emotions. And for me as a teacher, this does sound really nice. Isn't that a beautiful, honest analysis of learning? I want students to believe that this education is for them, not for me. So I would probably say that this, to me, is a pathos appeal. So I would include that because in this example, it's basically invoking like a sense of desire. Like, don't you want this as well? Wouldn't this be nice for you as well? This is a little bit of a hypothetical as well. But what's being appealed to is a teacher's kind of emotions about the passion that they have for teaching. So when you use pathos, you can appeal to fear, you can appeal to passion, you can appeal to lots of different emotions, anger. So what you're looking for are the appeals to pathos. The more appeals to pathos you find in an article, the more you can kind of realize that maybe you're being a little manipulated. So I'm going to include this, and I'm probably going to put a quote. I'm definitely going to put a quote because I'm copying and pasting it straight in. I'm going to put an in-text citation. I think this is 2017. Just pull it up again and count the paragraphs. Oh, it's the very last paragraph. So many paragraphs. So I'm not going to count those right now. I'm just going to make it up and say paragraph, I don't know. We're going to say it's paragraph 30. Don't trust me, though. You'll have to do the counting for yourself. There we go. So to me, this is like an appeal, a pathos appeal. I see that as a pathos appeal. Logos, I could probably find some examples, and that's up to you. Do that into a point font. So if you wanted to include a logos appeal, you could just do like that, and then go through and look for a logical appeal. A really good example would be to look and see if you can find a statistic. That's always a good logos appeal. But also, if you go through and you mark this stuff out or mark this stuff down, it's not asking you to answer all of these things. So just like I kind of am going to skip the details, you don't have to include every single one of these. We're just kind of getting a feel for the language here. So I'm going to erase logos because I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to erase details because I don't want to. And then for sentence structure, I'm going to explain the language is, if I'm thinking about, or the sentence structure, I'm going to go back and look at it. I would say sentence structure is varied, not too complex. It's pretty accessible or quick. Okay, so that's how I'm answering that. You might not agree. You could you could say like, I don't know how accessible it is. I don't know. I'm just kind of explaining that the sentence structure is varied and not too complex. Language. Okay, so this is a good one because it's asking about word choice and loaded language and words with strong connotation and metaphors. So when I'm analyzing the language, it does say include specific examples. So I might say some loaded language about grades being great. So if you've read the article, you know that that's fake. Not a big fan of grading, but I'm just like doing this as an example of what you could include. Some loaded language about grades being great, and then I would include an example. Okay, she does not do this. Do not type this in your planner and turn it in because actually she's not so into grades. But you can see that what I have here are two specific examples of the kind of language I'm talking about. So I'm saying some, or I'll even call it some positive descriptive language about grades. So I'm just making observations about the words that are being used. And honestly, if you're thinking, wow, Ms. Shaw's playing it really loosey-goosey with this. You mean I don't have to include this detail section? I only have to talk about ethos if I want. I don't have to include sentence structures if I don't feel like it. Yeah, just try your best to answer these questions, because the purpose of this is to think about the choices this author made, the conscious choices this author made when she was writing. Because to me, one of the most important questions here, oh, good golly, is this one about tone. So what we're doing here is kind of thinking about the language in the article to build up to this third question about tone. What impact do the writing choices have on the reader? Are the choices effective? Do they strengthen or weaken the author's argument? And then that's just a question for you to answer. So if you think that the sentence structure is too complicated, or you think that the author's tone, or not, we're not even getting a tone yet, but you think that the author's word choice is a little bit misleading, this is your place to say it. Here in this one, based on the author's writing choices, what is the overall tone? Is the author using a formal or informal writing style? Is the tone positive, negative, or neutral? Describe the tone: calm, optimistic, academic, angry, sarcastic, concerned, serious, etc. And then here's this really important question of what is the effect on the readers? Because remember, our overall question that we're trying to answer is, has Susan Blum written an effective article? This is the most important question in this section. So I'll just put that there. Okay. Now we move on to the credibility section. For your instructor-provided Unit 4 reading, which is, again, On Grading by Susan Blum, please answer the following questions about author and source credibility. So here is where you are going to bust out the Google. What do you know about the author's education or experience? Include URL link to source of information. You don't want to just copy it. Even taking an author's bio, even though it's their bio, which you can certainly find online, and you can find out a lot about this woman online. Just make sure it's the right woman. You can double check yourself by making sure that she's a professor. She wrote a book called Ungrading. Surprise, surprise. When you're going on Google, you're probably going to find a lot of bios. Just because you're looking for this information doesn't give you free range to plagiarize. So even if you include information from her bio, you're going to want to paraphrase what she says about her background into your own words. And so like if you do find a bio on a website, like perhaps where she teaches, you're going to want to include the URL link to that. And then there's the question of, is the author credible? Why or why not? Explain. And that's something we covered a little bit last time as well. So remember, I'll even throw in a definition of credibility. We'll pull it up. So here is a definition for you. The quality of being trusted and believed in. Do you find this author trustworthy? And then the next question is about the source. So same question, is the source the newspaper, the magazine, the journal, or the website? In this case, the source is going to be the Inside Higher Ed. So you can go and click on the About section on this website. You can read the Wikipedia on Inside Higher Ed. You can click on it. You can Google it. Figure out if we trust Inside Higher Ed as a source and answer that there. And that's what you'll do in this section. Credibility is your chance to get really into the Google and figure out more about your author and about your source.